Yesterday we looked at CSR from the corporate angle of what are the processes that go on inside a company, what they look for in a partner. Today we are kind of looking at the other side of the coin, which is we have two very eminent, experienced people who are very large implementing partners for corporates to do their CSR. And we have two very versatile ladies, I would say. I mean, when I looked through the CVs, let me briefly introduce them to you. We will request Madhu to speak first, then Preeta, and then take question answers, if that's okay with everybody. Great. So let me introduce Madhu. Madhu is Country Head Resource Mobilization of HelpAge. Many of us know HelpAge. BA from Stephens, MBA from DU. She's worked in the corporate and market research for more than 30 years, including 14 years in Singapore. And when in Singapore, she brought out a book on leading Singapore businessmen there through the Singapore Business Council. She has been on Parents Association and parent board of major educational institutions there. And she joined HelpAge in 2011 and has more than doubled the funds raised from corporate. And corporate CSR funds have grown 15 times under her watch. She is a member of the HelpAge executive and country team. So welcome, Madhu. Thank you for taking the time off. Coming to Preeta, even more versatile. Board director of Empower Pragati, drives partnerships, training, employability, organization, co-founder of Empower Foundation, which has won awards for women empowerment, governing board of Alliance of Skill Training Providers, director of FICUS Social Solutions. She's worked in senior positions in Feedback Ventures, Axo Nobel, Oberoi Hotels, etc., visiting faculty at many management schools. So what is very interesting about both these speakers, they have seen corporate deeply from the inside in corporate functions, not in the CSR function, mind you, as a deep corporate person, and then have come over to this sector. So I think yesterday we saw a reverse, if you recall the resource persons, they were all NGO people who had joined corporates to look after the CSR. Today we are having two people who have come from corporate into the NGO sector or the social development sector to basically work there. So very interesting for me. I am really looking forward to how these insights will differ. So over to you, Madhu and Preeta. Basically, our participants would like to understand how you are so successful in approaching corporates, in getting proposals through, how you maintain relationships, how you network, how you deliver on your promises, and what have been the challenges in working with corporates, and has that brought about any change within your organization? So if you could answer some or all of these questions and more that you can think of, we'd love it. Over to Madhu.
Just a little bit of background on HelpAge India. We basically work for the cause and care of the disadvantaged elderly people. And our vision is to have a society where the elderly have a right to live active, healthy lives. We've been working for the last 42 years, and we are working in more than 25 states across 175 districts and in over 2,000 plus villages across India. These are the three pillars of the HelpAge India's work. We work for rights, relief, and resources is the money that we raise from individuals, corporates, institutions, and from bilateral and multilateral organizations. We are a CRISIL VO 1A rated organization since 2014, which speaks of our excellence in operation and financial transparency. Number of other
Madhu, I am only seeing your very first slide yet.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Just to go back again, so sorry. We work for nationwide for the cause and care of the elderly, and our vision is to have a society where the elderly lead healthy, active, and dignified lives. HelpAge has been working since the last 42 years. We work in 25 states across 175 plus districts and 2,000 plus villages. This is the three pillars of HelpAge India's work. I'm going to be very quick and brief about it. And HelpAge India has been getting various awards and accolades. We are a CRISIL VO1A rated agency. As people on this program may know, that CRISIL started rating the NGO sector when CSR became mandatory. And this is actually a VO1A is on a scale of 1 to 5. It's the highest because it's 1 to 5 and 8 to C. So this is very, very important when we are approaching corporates. Recently, the most recent award we've got is which was as late as is the Population Award 2020, which is the first time an institution in India has been awarded this for the work that we are doing in the elderly sector. And now to go on to our experiences of working with the corporates. Of course, I think everyone knows the CSR Act, but what is important is that this act made available almost 15,000 plus crores, which came in for work to be done in the country. India is the first country where CSR is mandatory. So, we moved from mere philanthropy, which existed for many, many years in India with many big houses, like Tatas and Birla, to even pushing everyone to support CSR who qualified. And this supports the concept of the triple bottom line, which is the planet, profit, and people. So, what have our experiences been? Of course, it is mandatory that corporates need to work with NGOs. And yes, they do it for the betterment of society. We've also found that, more and more corporates are realizing that it enhances their image as a responsible corporate. They want to be involved greatly with the community. And also, of course, many corporates, because of the business operations they're in, whether it is, emitting effluents or they're in mining or other activities, they want to keep the communities where they are working, happy and work well with them so as to foster better relationships. So that is another reason that drives a CSR. Now, it is very often the thinking and the philosophy of the top management or the founder who plays a very, very critical role in establishing a company's CSR vision. And the CSR focus we also find can be either thematic or it could be related to the company's nature of business. So very often you will find companies that are in, say, the finance sector, they will want to do things like financial inclusion and things related to that, or education, etc. And of course, the government guidelines are also impacting where CSR money is going, especially now that the aspirational districts have been sort of included, and the government is trying to drive money to areas that are underserved, because we found that because companies are located basically in the well-developed states, what was happening is a lot of money is going to those areas, and the states which are not as well endowed in terms of the kind of corporates there are not getting that money. So the government is now trying to push by saying you need to focus on the aspirational districts. Looking at what the causes are that in India and corporate supports, if you look at this chart, you will see the right-hand side, which is where the bulk of the causes lie, which is education, health, community development, environment, and elderly and some of the other causes have a very small share. So education is something which is very, very close to the heart of a lot of corporates. Also, I think a lot of people see it as a very emotive cause because it promises a future. Similarly, for health, we are seeing health has become very, very important now after COVID, and a lot of the corporate budgets are now getting focused towards health and COVID related activities. So at HelpAge, typically, yes, there are RFPs and RFQs that you go for, but we try to research an organization looking to see where they are focused and how we can align themselves. So initially, when HelpAge started working, elderly was not part of the Schedule 7. So the route that HelpAge typically took was the health route, because we would say that we were working for the health of the community with special emphasis on the elderly. So, it becomes very, very important to align yourself along that. Now, Now, our experiences, we, typically been working with public sector, because before the CSR Act came in, the public sector had already been given the guidance to give money towards CSR. So when we started off, public sector formed the bulk of the money that we got. Almost about 70% of the funding that Helpage got came from the public sector. But in recent years, what we're finding is a lot of the public sector money is going for government initiatives such as Skill India, Swachh Bharat, or the Namomi Gange, and now for the PM cares and likely the COVID vaccination. So over time, we have found that the public sector share has shrunk to maybe about 20 to 28%, and we are going more and more after private sector, because the private sector is now so the private sector is where we are seeing a lot of growth and opportunities driven by the Section 135 of the Companies Act, and this has opened up a huge opportunity. At the same time, the private sector has its own challenges, being much more corporatized and much more driven. The kind of monitoring, reporting protocols, etc., that they need are much, much more stringent, and they also are much more demanding in a faster turnaround. So the whole level of professionalism and how we engage with the private sector has also sort of ensured or kind of driven us internally to become much more corporatized in the way we do work. And there's a much more, also we find that the private sector is much more involved. Their on-ground involvement and participation is much, much more. And you will have them wanting to become true partners and being very involved in what the protocols are, what the impact, etc. is. Now, while we do see there's a lot of corporate engagement, we're also seeing a lot of employee engagement. So many of the private sector corporates, they are trying to involve their employees so that, it becomes part of the ecosystem and the spirit of giving. And we are doing many, many payroll giving and employee sensitization drives and volunteering activities with many of the corporates we work. In fact, many of the corporates say when they do projects with us, we look to see how the employees can be sort of, brought into that program, so that this creates much more connectivity and there's much more of a commitment from both parties, and people can see, what their organization is doing. That gets a buy-in, and at the same time, because the employees are connected with the project, there is a feeling of belonging, and they feel sort of, better for the company. So in employee giving, we have also seen that sometimes when we've had disasters or when major events like COVID have happened, very often giving is done by the employee. So we had a corporate which is in the financial sector, and they were celebrating their 150th anniversary. And the overseas arm transferred a huge chunk of money to them, saying that we want to give this to India to mark this anniversary and this date. And the employees were allowed to choose. And even though that company was in the financial space and traditionally did not work with the elderly, and we'd been trying to work with them for years and years, when this happened and the employees chose the elderly, we started a relationship. And happily, because that relationship having once started, I would say we have worked with that particular corporate multiple times, and we are now talking about specific COVID related efforts towards the elderly. So what becomes important is that you give robust proposals. The value proposition that you give is very compelling, and that is what drives the CSR funds. And we are also finding that impact delivery and sustainable development are becoming very important drivers for selection of CSR partners by the corporates. So what are the expectations by the corporates from the relationship? So, some years ago, typically when we worked with corporates, they would ask us, okay, what is the kind of numbers you'd reach? How many villages would you be covering? So they were looking at sheer numbers. But now we are finding that corporates, when we are discussing proposals with them, even when we proposal, they're asking us to look at what is the sustainable impact or what are the outcomes that they see us as delivering from the proposal that we are suggesting to them. So they want to see that the intervention that they're doing become meaningful, they become transformational, and there is some evidence that they can see. So they also want, naturally, as a corporate, we also look to see how we can support them, because at the end of the day, when you make intervention, you want to be able to talk about it. So they're looking for success stories of change and the positive impact. And corporates, we find, are also now more willing to commit to a longer term projects, because I remember when I joined HelpAge years and years ago, we would have corporates who would give me say a mobile health van. They would just give me the capex and expect me to run the van, and they were not looking to make that commitment to run that van. And we put a stop to it, and we said, we can't take 14 or 15 lakhs and commit ourselves to almost a crore worth of work over the next 5 years. So we told corporates, if you want to work with us, then you have to be committed to a longer term, because if you want to sort of make an impact and make some difference, then the engagement has to be for a longer period. So, somewhere there has been a nudge from the NGO sector, somewhere there has been corporates also becoming, more educated and realizing that, if they want to make an impact, it has to be a longer engagement. We also find that corporates, because they're driven by their budgets, very often, while they may commit to us for a longer period, we need to go back to them, even though we've had the budget approved. On a year to year basis, the budgets for the following years are approved, which is something we find we have to work with. So much as we would like a long term commitment, so that I know, okay, this project is funded and taken care of. And while on paper I know that, I still am a little anxious, because the money is not utilized, or the project is running, say, behind. I still have to be chasing for that money. So that is something which maybe going forward we would like to see, that corporates actually put the money down, and then we work together on a much more sustained basis. Now, as I mentioned already, the CSR is naturally becoming more corporatized, because the private sector is very demanding. And public sector also, because they also have their internal checks and balances, now are becoming very, very stringent in their selection of the NGOs. So more and more we are seeing that corporates and PSUs are asking for RFPs and RFQs. So, the earlier model that we found, where, we would make outreach and it would be opportunistic, and we would just send out proposals hoping that corporates would be interested. More and more corporates are now putting out areas where they're interested, and then we try to match those and see how we can fit it to what they're asking, and try to sort of, customize our proposal. So there's a lot more customization, not only for the geographical area, but also, say, for some of the parts that go into a certain program. Also, we are finding there's much more strict compliance requirements. So the due diligences and the audits and the checks on the NGO's internal controls are becoming very important. And the kind of due diligence paperwork that we are needing to do, to, even to the upload before we even make it to the next stage, is much, much more demanding, and is becoming even more so. And especially multinational corporations, many of them have to deal with FACTA, they have to deal with, the corrupt practices thing. So they are also demanding a lot of things and a lot of due diligences to make sure that they do not run afoul of some of these requirements that they have internally, because the India teams very often don't drive that. It comes from overseas, and the India team is not willing to make those exceptions to match the Indian conditions for some of the due diligence that may not be possible on the ground in India. So, we make a commitment. For example, we will say, okay, we will run a special training program for the people who are going to be working on this particular project, so that they are aware of what are the do's and don'ts, etc. Because there's a huge worry about the reputational risk that is there, with the kind of social media scrutiny that we are seeing. Corporates and NGOs, even we ourselves are always concerned that there should never be a risk to the reputation of either the NGO, which is HelpAge, or the corporate. So a lot more scrutiny, a lot more care in the kind of deliverables that you agree to. And along with this, naturally comes the need to do much more exhaustive proposal writing. So, log frames and complex proposals formats are becoming very much the norms. The private sector also demands end-to-end management, as I've already mentioned, quick turnaround time and better reporting, and case studies, the difference that you make in a person's life. That is becoming important. It's not just about numbers, but also the difference you made on the ground. As I mentioned, that was the side where corporates are moving from being much more driven. We're also seeing how the partnership model is evolving. So earlier we would see, subcontracting, no role by the NGO, driven totally by the corporate, some amount of visionary patronage where it was the vision of the top boss or the top management team that would drive it, and the NGO just carried out. But over time, we are seeing, and this is the stage I think we are seeing more and more, is joint collaborative partnerships where there is joint managing, planning of the project. And this is a win-win for both parties because, you are actually doing work of equals. The attitude that corporates had earlier that we're giving the money and therefore we call the shots, I think again, nudged somewhat by NGOs like HelpAge, which have the ability to some extent stand up to some of the corporates and say, you know what, we really think you need to do this, or you really need to do a baseline study if you want to go and see, measure the impact. So, earlier corporates would say, no, we don't want a baseline, just go and do the work. So we tell them now, look, if you want to make the difference, if you want to upload this data, you have to have that baseline study so that 3 years down the line or 2 years down the line, when you do an impact assessment, you can talk about the difference that you make. So there's much more of an equal partnership happening now. I think the corporates are also becoming more educated and more enlightened. And again, it depends on who the person is. We've also had to deal, sorry to say, sometimes with the best of foundations and corporates where some of the junior people still have that mindset of sort of calling the shots or being very demanding, saying, I want this as of yesterday, or just come on the line and send this to me right away, which is not really the way things work. So over time we have to tell them, and it's kind of a carrot, and kind of sweetly talk to them and manage the relationship, and kind of get them to understand and look at it from our point of view, what is possible and what is not possible. So I think I've already gone over this. So for time, I will skip this slide. Critical factors for success. You really need to understand what is the corporate's area of interest and gauge the fit. And follow up is a must, because if you just leave a proposal, and very often, if you follow up, you also end up building a nice relationship, even if they haven't said yes to you. I've got people who, they're calling up, and over time, they are becoming friends almost. And so when maybe one project didn't work, but maybe there's another opportunity, the corporate starts to feel that, okay, this is a person who I can trust, or this is the NGO where they are very keen, and they come back to you. So, the long-term relationships that you can build up, or the relationship that you start off and you build, that becomes very, very important. And I think it becomes also very important to live up to your promises. So if I tell a corporate, I will give this to you end of today, then I have to be sure that I will give it to them end of today. And that is something which is very important, especially in India, where people have a tendency to say, yes, I'll give it to you, and then we don't deliver, and then we keep buying time. So at HelpAge, we do promote this thing that, make a commitment. If you feel you cannot deliver, far better to say you cannot do something, or you cannot revert to the corporate by such and the time that they're asking. Explain to them the problem. But once you've given a time, then if it's end of day, it has to be that. And a can-do attitude and a personal touch, of course, are very important. And transparency and credibility and openness goes without saying, that remains. So what are the challenges we are seeing in the CSR environment? I think this year, especially with COVID, we've seen a lot of the money that's got sucked out into the COVID relief and into the PM CARES Fund, which is giving 100% tax exemption, leaving very little money that is there available. And we have found, corporates sometimes are now needing to cut out their budgets, or they've asked us to trim something for this year so that they can, meet their commitments and then, revive it later. Also, going forward, as we see the COVID vaccination becoming an important part, maybe with the CSR spends going there, looking out into the future, if I were to look at the crystal ball, a lot of money is going to be taken away, and I think it's going to be a lot of NGOs fighting for a much, much smaller pie of the CSR funding, because, by the time you take away the PM cares, the COVID relief, the vaccination, and some of the other demands the government is making, because we are seeing this in the public sector, that a lot of the MP LAD funds also, they are the MPs kind of direct the public sector where the money is to be spent. So that leaves a much, much smaller pool of funds that is going to be available. So, how well you service the corporate, how happy you keep the corporate, how well you do your work, that is going to be very, very critical. And so I would end with saying that the critical success factors, you need to build up a good track record. Your transparency in terms of your financial reporting and governance becomes very critical. You need to have very well-defined processes and systems, and timely, prompt donor reporting and servicing become very, very critical, because NGOs that are used to this and service their donors well and keep satisfied donors are the NGOs that will now be able to get that pie. And with that, I would like to thank you all and wait for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madhu. That was so rich. I don't know if I've been able to take in everything, but I've got so much out of that. I'll have to request Madhu and Preeta, this may go on till about 11:40, considering that we started a little late. If that is okay with both of you?
That's okay.
Madhu?
It's fine with me. I'm the person who delayed it all. So
no. Technology delayed it. So I would request participants to start putting their questions in chat. And I would request Bharati, if you're there, to keep a track and ask the questions to the relevant people at the end of the session. So now I will hand over to Preeta to open up even more horizons and avenues of thought.
Thank you. Madhu, that was very nice. I was listening mesmerized. And Meena, thank you for putting this into context. And I kind of will take you on the 2 points that you mentioned, what insights from the corporate sector being on the other side, I mean, and how has that shaped the organization and its strategy in CSR or funding or whatever right now. And second is the challenge. So I'm going to just talk through it. And I think the first and critical, and this is to everybody, I think it's very, very important that you know why you are here in this space. This is not a job. This is not something which you get into because there was nothing else to do. So unless there is a deep commitment as to why you are here and what's the cause that you are championing, and the cause need not be narrow. For example, when Madhu is talking about health, and I'm thinking, and we already do, is that skills is very much a part of health. Because unless Anganwadi workers are skilled, how come health is excluded? So skills is part of health. So I'm going to talk about 2-3 experiences from my own career and why this shift happened, and that's to me very, very important. Way back, and this is like early 90s. All of you would have heard of Safdar Hashmi. He got murdered while he was doing a street play, and that happened to be near a factory where I was, and I was the HR head for that factory. This is years before, you are talking about, do individuals have a right in political participation? And there was a huge lot of unrest in the factory because of what stance that the company should take. Should there be something that they be allowed to participate or protest, or this is not part of who they are? You're supposed to work and you don't have a right, and the company has no positioning, no stance on whether you can participate. So that was one, and it set me thinking. Then years later, when I was in the Oberois, and you're building these luxury hotels, you're building hotels that the workers and the people who are constructing will never be probably able to afford. What is it that you can do that makes them feel part of it? Again, this is much before the resettlement and rehabilitation laws, etc., came into force. That is, that if you take land from people for where you are going to build a public project, or even a factory or a warehouse or an SEZ, what role do they play in the development of that? And to me, that was one turning point, saying, what is it that one can do where, you are not just looking at welfare of people in your company or in the factory that you are in. You have a role, a larger role, and what can be kind of done. I got the opportunity while I was in Airtel, and we looked at launching an initiative. Again, this is much before even employee volunteering became a catchword and popular. And we launched an initiative which later on became a national initiative along with the HRD network, called Beyond Business. And Beyond Business was a platform, and this is 2020 years back, to help individual corporates, employees to participate in capacity building of the not-for-profit sector. Not funding. Funding is one part. But NGOs need capacity to be built in proposal writing. We are hearing that, writing proposals. How many of us even have the wherewithal or even the resource? It's expensive if you have to hire somebody to do a proposal writing. It requires to be written in a proper format. You require research, you require data. How can we build capacity for NGOs? Similarly, project planning, similarly, budgeting, similarly, even simply recruitment. And how do you do fundraising? I mean, so how do you do fundraising? How do you even go out and prepare a database? What is it that you need to go and talk about? How do you make a corporate pitch? How do you prepare your own website? And so in Beyond Business, and Madhu, I think I don't know, it was before your time, but HelpAge was one of our, Beyond Business partners. We had when we finished, about 3 years that we ran, we had about 500, corporate volunteers, and we had about 15, 16 not-for-profits and similar, corporate supporting in building capacity. So my first thing is that you need a cause, and that cause has to permeate and align with the organization that you are, part of. Empower Pragati is in the skill space. We are partners of the National Skill Development Corporation, and as old as the formal, structured TVET sector in the country is, which is the vocational and education sector in the country. It's not to say vocational skill was not there in the country. It was very much there. We had ITIs, we had NGOs doing skill, but not in the manner, structured with standards, etc., etc. So NSDC was the first, formal means to that. So Empower Pragati is a for-profit social enterprise. Empower Foundation is the NGO, and the foundation works apart from skill in the areas of literacy and community awareness. The philosophy for both is kind of wide. In Empower Pragati, it is transforming lives, skilling India. And for the foundation is powering people's progress. That gives us a little bit of flexibility, and we're not a very big brand, but even in whatever that the space that we are in, we do very well, both in terms of looking at implementing programs as well as getting funding. So the first is the alignment to the cause. What is it that you're doing? Do you understand? So most of you who are, working, are you completely in sync with that? Because that's important when you are actually doing the second step, which is going out, and looking at projects, looking at implementing, looking at fundraising. So my second thing is, and that's something that's worked for us, is what models that you want to implement. As long as you are flexible and you are open to looking at various ways in which you are making sure your organization's purpose can be realized. For example, skill. We work with youth who have not been able to finish education, youth who are not employable, but have some degree of education, whether it's a class 10, class 12 graduation. We work with domestic workers. In fact, when we started, our whole purpose of setting this up was to work with domestic workers, a neglected sector, which nobody even thinks of, that what is it that they need skilling for and what can be done with them. I mean, after all, everybody knows how to sweep floors and wash utensils. We work with people with special abilities. We work with Tihar jail juvenile delinquents, but the model in each one has to be different. So the second thing that's helpful is that your models have to be clear, and maybe you should be having a variety of menu. Approach corporates with your different models. So in some companies, I mean, we're working with a large company for training roadside mechanics. This is not skill training in in a structured training center, etc. These are mechanics who repair scooters, etc. under a tree. And even looking at what kind of program that you do for them and where do you train them? I mean, under a tree. So this program happens pre-COVID. Now it is online. Pre-COVID, it was happening at night. So after they have finished their work, and you rent a center or a space close to where they are. So roadside mechanics, you'll usually find them around some hubs. So Delhi alone, there are some 25 hubs and across the country similarly. Similarly, when we worked with Tihar jail delinquents, the model is different. How will you train? What kind of course that you need to run for them? So it's important to not just be flexible, but to know what you're doing. So none of it you can just start off. So do you have experience? Have you done a pilot? Do you know what will be the outcomes you're looking for? Do you know what deliverables you are looking for? Our program that we do in adult literacy, and we believe adult literacy is a bigger problem than children's education, because if the adult is not literate, then chances are that he or she will not give importance to their children's education. And of course, it's a cause for poverty, so on and so forth. Our model for adult literacy, which we call functional literacy, is not guaranteeing that you become, class 10th pass or class 12th pass. We believe functional literacy is important, which means that you and an adult should be able to go about his or her daily life and functions with ease. Must also be aware of rights, responsibilities, social, political, economic. Should know about, and especially women should know about, from sexual harassment laws to property rights and so on and so forth. Now, that's a model that we first piloted before we went and talked to funders to say, this is what my record is. Come and see the work here. So one should be willing to experiment, but you cannot do that till you have done some pilots. So I would say the second is important, models. The third thing, and that's something which is extremely, I will say, not that difficult and extremely powerful, is what kind of partnerships are you building globally as well? We are a member nominated of the Business Call to Action. This is a UNDP multilat. By ourselves, I don't think we even have the stature to be part of that. But our work got recognized, and without even feeling overawed that how can we, because we're just a one year. We became members when we were hardly a year, 2 years. But what BCTA looks at is building inclusive businesses globally. And what we work is bottom of the pyramid. It made sense. Today, we are one of the 16 companies globally that help make sure that businesses, how do they contribute to the sustainable development goals? So my point is that each one of us can look at what can we do to become a partner or a member of some of these global organizations. We're now invited by IBAN, which is a larger inclusive business network, because the work that we do directly aligns to about 5 of the SDG goals. So not just the partnership and collaboration, but your own knowledge about all of these things, because it is like increasingly important to know what is it that you do, where does it go and impact, and if SDG is important, do you know that? Do you understand what kind of your contribution is making to the SDG goals? Similarly, I would say, I know we are all talking CSR, but if I remove the C from there and just look at social responsibility, then to my mind, COVID is actually a great opportunity, because suddenly, not suddenly, the world's actually thinking about what can it do. There are people concerned, there are individuals worried. I mean, we've had several examples of ordinary people becoming heroes overnight. Sonu Sood. Are you aware Sonu Sood has currently invested in a steel company to look at providing housing for migrant workers? It's not CSR. It's an individually who's socially responsible. There have been many such examples, and we believe that tapping some of these would be very, very useful. So if I remove C from that and look at different also, I mean, yeah, that's, but not traditionally under the Companies Act. I see impact investing being a big area, and there are a lot of funds and organizations that are looking at impact investing, different models of impact investing, whether that's being done by multilateral agencies or VC funds or organizations who may not say it's impact investing, but willing to put their money and look at deliverables, differently. So I'll say that is another, kind of point that you must, look at. So from my insight, I have seen that usually, and this is before kind of CSR became a buzzword. If the organization is not a socially responsible organization, chances are the CSR function is limited to what is only the minimum requirement. But it's possible to build that in them. And Madhu gave a nice example of volunteering. I believe every human, everybody has an altruistic streak in him or her. You want to do good. You want to do things with passion, and it's not always for money. And my experience in that Beyond Business showed people are willing to give time. People are willing to, volunteer, effort, share their knowledge. We must know how to kind of leverage that. So it's, the important thing is that if I can build a relationship, not just for my project. So we work with a lot of corporates where we may not ever get any funding, but their employees are mentors to our students who are in skill programs. We've recently launched, again, in the COVID times, a micro-entrepreneurship program just to help the scores and scores of men and women who lost jobs to set up something very small in their village or their town where they come from. And this is on a shoestring budget where I've not got that kind of funds. But we've got corporates its employees volunteering to become mentors. And so maybe it will not happen tomorrow, but maybe it will happen over time. And if it doesn't happen, no problem. I am different, way that I have got, let's say, fund from them, because I don't have to then spend so much in, resources. So it's important to look at, what that insight is. Similarly, since we are in skill, COVID is especially a watershed moment in history. Suddenly, everybody has to use mobile. Suddenly, everybody has to be accessible on the net, whether it's for education or for a meeting like this. And of course, there is a huge digital divide. The poor don't even have access to a phone, or if they have, then there is one person in the family who has a phone, and that's demanded by children who need to go to school, youth who needs to get skilled, for banking, for ration card, for everything else. And so, how do you make sure that everybody kind of gets access to some of these simple resources? So the whole thing is that, what can I do in order to also make sure employees in a company are becoming skilled with this new digital technology, new way of working? Can I help companies to look at skill as a slightly more extended CSR, where I am realizing that my own employees, I can train using my company funds, but can I do beyond and look at skilling others, because digital skills, being aware of these new reality is a requirement. So corporates would be willing if I can come and share and talk to them and help them expand and be more creative in the ways that they can partner with an NGO or an organization for meeting their objectives beyond just even the Companies Act, mandate. So that's important for us to do conversations with companies beyond even CSR, and we found that they are willing to. And I'm looking at my other side, would be most happy to talk to NGOs when I was on the other side, who come and are willing to explore on what ways they can, look at working with us beyond just looking at funds. So Meena, these are my thoughts in terms of both your questions, and happy to take questions from everybody.
Wonderful. I think, Madhu and Preeta have given, are kind of making up and complementing a whole picture. But one message that I get from both of you is trust. Build trust, keep in touch. Do make it like, I will come to you when there's a project and you have to fund it. You have to build relationships, create trust, and sustain. So I have my own messages. But I think let's go to Bharti, if you can see what are the questions in the chat and ask them.
We have two questions in the chat box, and there is one request also. Somebody requested to share the presentations of the speakers. And the question...
Okay. My response to that would be that we will check with each speaker if it's okay to share. And if they are fine, we will circulate it.
Yeah. And the first question is from Gajanan Kale, and he is asking, grassroots NGOs are not capable to handle CSR expectations. How can we tackle this?
Both Madhu and Preeta, if you can say a few words.
So let me go first. Gajanan, I'm a grassroots NGO. Empower Foundation is an absolutely grassroots NGO. I'm not sure what you mean by handling the CSR expert, but let me say, if that person is a CSR expert, you are expert in your field. That's what I said. So I said, when we have...
I'm sorry, he's saying CSR expectations.
CSR expectation. Yeah. Okay. So again, I'm not sure, but what would you mean by CSR expectation? But is the expectation of the corporate, would you mean?
Yes.
In which case, yeah, in which case I would say you need to kind of have, detailed in-depth conversation to understand. One thing that I have found useful is that you can't be too dogmatic about what you believe is the only right way of doing it, because the corporate might have a point of view, and you know your subject, you know what is it that you can deliver, you have data, you have research, you have worked, and the corporate may have its own, and the mandate, it may have its own funds, it may have its own limitations. I think dialogue and talking kind of help to not taking a hard stance. That's my answer. Madhu, over to you.
I think also corporates also have a different expectations if they're working with grassroots organizations. I think what they look for is more the diligence, the financials, if they are okay, and their the way they track things and the way they do their record keeping. I don't think a corporate which is working with a smaller organization will put the same kind of expectations as it has with, say, a helpage kind of an entity. So I think corporates are very practical about that. So I would not worry. I would just say that for a grassroots organization to be successful, they should just make sure that their delivery is the money leakages. That is something that corporates worry about when they're dealing with smaller grassroots. So you offer to open up your books to the audits, and I think that establishes the trust. So really, at the end of the day, is the trust. If you're doing good work, if your delivery capabilities are there in whichever way you can in the area you are working in, I think that is what would matter to a corporate. Does that answer your question?
I hope so. Can we move to the next question? This question is from Mr. Arvind to Mr.
Yes, I can read that. It's what is the
Madhu ma'am
proposals needed to be customized versus cause proposals actually needed urgent attention irrespective of priority. I don't think you can put a ratio because it really depends. Sometimes these are RFQs and RFPs that are there online, and you just have to fit your proposal to what the corporate is asking, because that is the first cutoff, where you have the qualifying round of sorts. But there are some corporates where even if they have a kind of RFP that needs to be uploaded and stuff, there are still conversations that they want to have with you. And I, for example, recently been talking to a big corporate where they have pretty stringent sort of the way that, but we did a couple of conversations and calls to discuss, what is it that we could do, and then what are the levels that we can, where should we make the changes, and then we told them these are the areas we work in, and then they came back and said, no, we don't want all these areas, we want certain specific one. So it's really, I think, a question about the kind of relationships you develop. But yeah, when you're just doing an RFP and RFQ, I don't think you have much choice of customizing there. But this is an evolving thing, where if you have a partnership, then you can start and you've built up a relationship. Then that customization part comes in, because the corporate might have a certain amount of budget. And, if there is a tweaking that is needed, or you cut down the scope, or you make certain changes, that's the kind of customization you can do. Or if they say they want to cover certain areas, so that is the next stage. But if that really comes after you qualify for the first round or whatever.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Madhu and Preeta. I know there'll be a lot more questions, but probably, a little, there is one question which I don't know. Preeta, what sort of passion should drive the NGO within the framework that Madhu has provided?
Can I answer that?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, anyone who's working in an NGO is not really doing it for the money alone. The money, if you were to work, and I come from a corporate background, so there is a vast difference. I think what drives people is the passion and the commitment to the cause. And the desire to excel. I think that is something that is part and parcel of people. I don't think there's any sort of framework or what an NGO does. I think it's the sense of belonging you get and the desire to succeed and get that money for the beneficiaries that you serve. And I think, my chief executive, my former chief executive under whom I worked for a number of years, Matthew Cherian, he's very well known in the NGO space. He used to say something which was very interesting. He said, when you go back home and you get that sense of satisfaction and somewhere, and I think he made a fantastic point. He says somewhere there is a God above, and you get your gratitude, or not gratitude, but call it the क्या बोलते हैं हिंदी में phal, the phal. And if I look around me at so many of my colleagues in HelpAge, we have people who are peons, and look at their children, how well they're doing, and where they've moved on. So I think somewhere God has his hand above your head, because if you do things with your heart, and that's what you need, your heart should be there in the work you do. And I think I wrote that when I sent you my thoughts. I think I worked in the corporate sector, but believe you me, the satisfaction that you get, with the success. I mean, I remember if you achieved your sales target in a corporate, yeah, you felt great, your boss patted you, but there was a different sense compared to when you get your targets or commitment for a proposal. Compared to that, I mean, it's another feeling altogether. I mean, I can't really define it, but there is a feeling of not only having it's not having done your bit and got your target, but having done your bit because your work is going to make a difference in somebody's life. Yeah.
Beautiful. I think a wonderful note to end the session on. Basically, karma. I think you're saying.
That's right. I was looking for that word. Yes.
So be passionate.
Last question.
Yes, Bharti. Quickly, Madhu has to leave.
Yeah, there is one more question from Reena. Should we send the proposals randomly to any corporate, or is there any mechanism to sending our proposal?
So if I may just give a bit of advice there. Yes, you could randomly send proposals to corporates if you've done your research properly and you've seen where they're aligned. But it's a good way is to, I think all of you are savvy on LinkedIn and stuff. Try to find a connect, because when you find a connect and you can route your proposal, because, if a corporate is looking in that area and it's an RFP and you're one of them, it's one thing. But if you're just sending a proposal because, you know this is a corporate which has got X amount of money, so you can do a lot of research online, what is the kind of profits they're making. And if you know the profit they're making, you know the kind of money they have available for CSR. And then you go online and you look at which are the areas they're working in. So once you've aligned that and you think you have a proposition that would be interesting to the corporate, the HR person or the CSR person is always there, but it helps if you could, especially if you're a smaller NGO where, you don't have a brand name that can push you through, is to try and find a connect. Now, this could be a connect to people you worked with before, or you go onto LinkedIn and you look for a profile and you try to make an outreach so that, when the follow-ups you do, that is when you build, and then there's a give and a take and a conversation, so you could then fine tune. So then the chances of a success are much more. But having said that, just giving a proposal, it's purely whether you are the proposition is compelling enough and is matching the corporates, and then they have the confidence that you would be able to carry it out in the manner that they want. I think those are the critical factors.
And I would just like to add from my experience, it's fine, do send proposals after your research and whatever, but don't be offended that a corporate doesn't give you a project. There is sometimes this sense as if I have sent the proposal, now you jolly well fund me. This needs to be, corporate, as we saw yesterday, has its own compulsions. fantastic work you're doing. It's not a comment on the work that you're doing. But if it doesn't match their requirements, it doesn't match their requirements. So I think we have to approach it that, okay, I will send 10. Maybe one guy will call me. Good enough. It's like applying for jobs, right? Not everybody is obliged to call you for the interview.
No, you're absolutely sending out hundreds of letters, and sometimes people don't even accept them. So if you want to be in this sector and you want to be a fundraiser, then you have to have a slightly thick skin and say, look, I'm going to ask. And that's it, because my work is to ask. And if I'm lucky, great. If I'm not, I keep trying. There's no end to it.
Exactly. So there's no rancor on either side. That's just what I wanted to say.
There isn't. You have to accept it, and that's the way it is.
Yeah.
I'll have to take my leave. I'm running a little behind time.
No.
But thank you so much to the participants for hearing us out, and thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Madhu. Preetha,
thank you so much.
Amazing insights, both of you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank
you.
I
look forward to being in touch. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Participants, I think, we deserve a small break. It's 11:52. We will take exactly 8 minutes off and start bang at 12. So take a bio break, drink your water, drink your tea, whatever, walk around, because that's supposed to be very good. You can't keep sitting. So 8 minutes and back. Thank you. Good afternoon. I hope the 8-minute break was refreshing. Let's get back because we are running a little short of time, but I think we'll do fine. We'll finish our agenda for the day. We had asked you before the course to send in 3 bullet points each on your learnings of working in CSR or with CSR. Many of you have sent in very good points. I thought it will be a good opportunity to just go over these excuse me, and discuss them. So I put them in the form of a presentation. What I'm going to do is make this session a little more interactive than we've been able to make it. So I'll put up a slide. Anybody who has reactions or would like to comment on it or add to it or differ with it, please go ahead and feel free. You can unmute yourself and speak. Is that okay? You can't answer that because you're all muted. Okay. The first set of insights was funding through CSR is a slow process, requires immense persistence and planning. Building network is crucial to raising funds. Personal intentions and clarity of long-term purpose is far more important than immediate program or current execution to raise funds. I would say that this person has actually summed up all that we've been discussing for 2 days. He or she did not need to attend this program. But if there are any reactions, any comments, anybody would like to say, add, just unmute yourself and go.
I would like to add something here. I agree with this point.
Your name, just mention your name.
Ma'am, this is Snigdha from Miracle Foundation, India.
Hi, Snigdha, go on.
So I agree with this point and the other 2 points as well. So for me, I have been with the same organization for the last 8 years. And CSR definitely has been a slow process for this organization because as a brand, we were not that known. So because we've been so persistent about this entire process, we have corporates coming back to us now after years, after 3 years, after 4 years, saying that, yes, we want to work with you now. We are ready to work with you now. So, yes. So in the last 8 years, what we focused on is building network. Not always just waiting for funds, but we've looked for feedback also at times. We've looked for support in just building capacity otherwise. And yes, I do agree that personal intentions and clarity of long-term goals is far important than anything else because end of the day, fundraising is relationship building also.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Snigdha. And just to mention, Snigdha, I have worked with Snigdha. It's always been a pleasure. The next set of points, need specific measurable outcomes for undertaking a project. Difficult to reach CSRs, particularly this year with COVID. Decision making slow due to multiple levels. I think some are The last point is the same as the last slide, but anybody would like to comment on the first 2 points?
Again, if I may.
Yeah.
I don't agree with the second point, difficult to reach CSRs, particularly this year with COVID. I think it has been considerably easy to reach out to CSR this year than otherwise. Maybe it's because of the change in dynamics that everybody is working from home. There's more time to allot to meetings, etc. But I think a lot of corporate CSRs have been very, very proactive in responding back and saying that, look, boss, I can't give you money this year. Let's talk next year. Or I can help you in this way. Let me know how I can help you.
Wonderful. That's a different perspective. So yeah, I think we can all take heart from that. I would just like to add one dimension that maybe the thrust area of your activities might make it either easier or more difficult in a COVID year, in this scenario. So suppose you're working on maybe health or, things like that. Maybe it's easier. Maybe if you're doing skill training, maybe it's a little more difficult. I don't know. So that could be a factor too.
Also, I think, ma'am, we've gone back to the traditional CSR thematic focus areas where we're looking at reaching out to children, underprivileged, all of that. So I think
exactly
it's been key this year.
Yeah, so the kind of activities may have changed and therefore may make it more difficult or less difficult, depending on what you do.
Yeah, just to add, sorry.
Your name? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Prashant Srivastav. I'm from Sacha. Interestingly, I've also worked with Snigdha long back. But I mean, so there are two things which will definitely impact for the COVID thing. So when the top lines have eroded for a lot of companies, so that will have an impact on the overall budgets available for CSR. And second, I mean, and I think a lot of participants have already mentioned it, there's a lot of diversion to PM cares and COVID relief activities. So that might actually kind of shrink the total pie, which is available for CSR projects, etc.
True. That is going to happen not just this year, because remember the calculation is based on the profits of the last 3 years. So this will have a carryover impact.
Absolutely.
When profits are so down this year, be sure that for the next 3 years, we are going to see that. Okay, the next set of bullets. Various number of problems prevails in a community that need to be addressed. Collaboration of different development organizations such as NGOs and government must have a good understanding skill along with feeling of empathy to work efficiently in CSR. Anybody would like to comment on this? I think these are generally, of course, true. But any specific comments? Whoops, somebody's baby is yelling. Okay, I think this first point of, collaboration, NGO, corporate, government, it's sometimes a little difficult. This is, in the theoretical and ideal world, this is absolutely essential. But how often it happens or how easy it is for it to happen is quite a question. If anybody, let's move on. Encourage and support collaboration between NGOs working on the same issue, building trust, respect, flexibility, evaluating and meeting the compliance requirements, impact before, during the CSR partnership. Any comments? Anything to add? Has anybody any experience of 2 or 3 NGOs working together on a project funded by CSR? Nopes or everybody is asleep. Either which way. Let's move on. Okay, no experience. Right. Next set of bullets. Through
I would like
CSR.
to add something.
Yes, who is this?
I'm Bablu from Mukul Madhav Foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah. The CSR of Finolex Industries, and we work with the government in healthcare sector in Pune. So this is the one of the project of Sasun General Hospital, where we supported government hospital to improve their healthcare services with the equipments and training medical healthcare professionals. So here we invited many NGOs and corporates to collaborate to develop government healthcare system. It's the project completed in 2017, and till many corporates came forward and collaborate with us as they saw the result of the government hospitals project. So it's very impactful that if you can submit proper reports, impact assessment, and the beneficiaries details to corporates and other NGOs. So it's depend on us, as per our experience, that it's depend on us how we promote the project and how we sustain the project. So then automatically many corporates and NGOs came forward and work with us. So that's how
fantastic. Yeah. So having impact, making the impact sustainable, and sensitively showcasing your outcomes. I think that those are the points you're making. Very important. Okay. Here is another set. Through different CSR activities, our ladies and children got exposure of meeting corporate people. So I think this is, I don't know whether this is community ladies and children, but I think it's a very good point that they get exposed to corporates and know about all walks of life. Our NGO gets to meet new people who might help us grow as an NGO. And we get ideas and helping hands to start new courses. So this is the experience of an NGO working with a corporate. I think it's bringing in facets beyond money, which I think all speakers have been talking about. So the kind of exposure that your community can get through meeting corporate people, you yourself as an NGO, how you can grow through new perspectives, and how your work can be aided. I think very good points. Anything else to add on this? Anybody, briefly?
Actually, Samskar Promotion Foundation got support from ONGC CSR. And well, at the start, we did not have ESI registration, PF registration, etc. And in the first project monitoring committee, we were asked to comply with all that. The compliance of Samskar Promotion Foundation is now 10% in all respects. And our reporting methodology, our the structure, our the way we are the accounting procedures, everything was refined. It has become perfect because of we are fortunate enough to get it early in this one, and that refined all our processes. And few questions which they used to ask during the quarterly project monitoring committee meetings were a lot of I should say throwing light on areas of where we have to improve our organization, and that was an excellent way we improved our governance of the NGO. That was a great learning for us.
Fantastic. I think that this is the point that some of the speakers were also making. Don't see corporates just as a source of funding. See it as a partnership where you can educate them and they can help capacity build you in what needs on either end. Thank you. This is the next set. There are professional inputs from the CSR teams that help NGOs. Sometimes unrealistic expectations put the organization in an uncomfortable situation. Balance of documentation and activity measurements in terms of numbers emphasized. Any comments?
One small learning was our activity should generate documentation, and this need not be considered as a sort of a. It is a part of the activity itself. The last part of the activity is report. That should be the way. In that way we surmounted our problem. Otherwise, we were searching for the documentation before the project monitoring meeting every quarter. It was a nightmare for us. But when we started doing this, it helped us a lot. There is no time spent now just to compile. That's a one-day work now.
Right. I think the point is you integrate some of these basic things. You don't look at them as something outside of the work. It is very much a part of the project cycle. Great.
Can you share, ma'am?
Yeah. Yes, please. Who is this?
Mehul here.
Mehul. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, Mehul.
Yes, हमारा जो एक्सपीरियंस है पार्टनर्स के साथ, CSR पार्टनर्स के साथ, हम काम कर रहे वुमेन एम्पावरमेंट के ऊपर। उसमें भी एक प्रोजेक्ट है एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप का। तो हम 3 महीने में ही मतलब बहुत एक्सपेक्टेशन हो जाती है कि महिलाओं की अर्निंग बढ़ जाए, है ना। अब लगता है कि 6-7 महीने तो महिलाओं को जो टेम्परामेंट है एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप का, वो डेवलपमेंट करने में टाइम लगता है। अब वो मतलब है ना, वो मतलब शांति रहती नहीं कि आप सोच पाए, महिला को तैयार कर पाए, टेम्परामेंट बिल्ड कर पाए, सीधा ही नंबर के कि आप इनकी इनकम बढ़ी कि नहीं। तो हमारे साथ वो भी रहता है। सेम चीज है जो आपने शेयर की, बहुत अच्छा लगा ये।
No, I think absolutely true. ये this education दो तरफा होना चाहिए. Somebody mentioned, one of the speakers yesterday, कि NGO का भी जिम्मेदारी और हक दोनों भी है, responsibility and duty, to educate the corporate. This is not like a manufacturing plant that you put it up and you put the raw materials and out come the products. Social processes are difficult, पर ये थोड़ा slow process है, but we must all take it as a responsibility and do it.
Yes.
Great.
मुझे याद है आपने कल समराइज किया था कि teach the CSR. Yes, thank you.
हाँ, exactly.
Yes, thank you.
Experiencing community as partner, not just a stakeholder, as part of designing intervention. How digitization has fostered impact of project intervention. How to make more resilient and adaptive responses during COVID crisis. I think these are learnings. How to make the community as a partner, very important. Digitization, I think, is very important, and if corporates are able to bring that in, that is great. Any comments on this set? Or any insights anybody would like to share? Okay. Let me move on. Community prospects towards corporates, managing community for corporates, smooth operation and liaison with different stakeholders, health hazardous and health seeking behaviors of the locality. I think the second point is very important. I don't know if this is what the writer meant, but one of the purposes that CSR is done is something called risk management. We may or may not be comfortable with it as NGOs, but this is definitely one of the reasons why CSR is undertaken. That is, I have created some disturbance in the community next to my plant. Let me do some positive actions so that we are able to maintain a good relationship. Otherwise, there might be difficulties for my business. And if you are an NGO implementing partner, definitely this is your tasks, whether said or unsaid, that you make a smooth relationship between the company and the community. So any experiences in this or any reactions?
Madam, this is Umya from Gramin Chara, Assam.
Yes.
Actually, managing community for corporate smooth operation and liaison with different stakeholders, it is the actually I have seen all the points here, sitting here in my room, and this point is very important for us also, since we are an implementing agency working in Assam and Meghalaya, mainly in northeastern region. Okay, but for this purpose, what we do? Actually, in community level, we organize the community into small groups. Then they are federated into a common platform, which we call cluster body. Then the cluster bodies are again federated to an FPO. And what we do, the FPOs are again organized into a private limited company for a business related activities, since we are promoting livelihood for the communities of tribal people of Assam and northeastern region, like Assam and Meghalaya, Mizoram, and again we are working in Nagaland also. This is important points, managing community for corporates and smooth.
Yeah, definitely. Any other, thank you for that input. Any other comments or things to share? Let me cite an example from my experience in GMR. The GMR Foundation is the CSR arm of the GMR group. So you would think it is the same entity. But sometimes when the communities had some problem with the corporate, they would go to the company and say, you are not doing anything for us. And the company CEO would say, but GMR Varalakshmi Foundation is doing so many programs in the field with you. You've all appreciated it. And they would say, that is the foundation. You are the company. You do something. Never mind what foundation does. So, it's quite a tricky situation on how you bring about this, even if you're an outside NGO or an implementing partner, how you keep showing the community the relationship between what you are doing and the support you're getting from the company to do it. Otherwise, the company will, again have some problem or the other. Yeah, I will share this presentation. It's from all of you, so not a problem. Right. Anybody has anything to say on this slide? Yeah. Or we'll go on. Okay, these are three learnings. CSR offers professional work culture, excellent documentation of impacts and outcomes is recorded, and adoption of modern tools and technology in the work is swift. Yeah, I think what you're saying is the corporate culture positives also come into the CSR working. We also have to see that the negatives of the corporate culture don't come into the CSR working. But that's my personal thing. Any comments? Anybody?
Hello? Yeah.
Yes.
रीना बैनर्जी, या ये बहुत वैलिड पॉइंट है जो आपने रखा है, क्योंकि अगर आपके पास सभी ड्यू डिलीजेंस इंटैक्ट है तो कॉर्पोरेट को आपके साथ आने में बहुत दिक्कत नहीं होती है, क्योंकि अगर प्रॉपर रूप से ड्यू डिलीजेंस मेंटेन नहीं है तो आता हुआ प्रोजेक्ट भी कई बार चला जाता है। इसलिए हमको अपने काम के साथ साथ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को स्ट्रेंथन करना है कि ऑल प्रॉपर डॉक्यूमेंट्स इन टाइम, रजिस्ट्रेशन, ये सब होना चाहिए। और इसके अलावा जो भी प्रोग्राम हम कर रहे हैं उसका प्रॉपर इम्पैक्ट और ये सब डोनर के सामने हमको ठीक से रखना पड़ेगा, तभी जाके कॉर्पोरेट फंड्स हमारे तक आ पाएगा।
Right. I think I agree. And I think what has been the theme that has resonated with me in these 2 days is CSR foundations and NGOs and implementing partners must learn the best from the corporate to become more professionalized, impact-oriented, outcome-oriented. At the same time, corporates have to learn about social development from the NGOs. So, this two-way process is really good for everybody.
राइट मैम मैं एक शेयर करना चाहूंगा। मेहुल फ्रॉम प्रयास, यस, तो हमने भी मतलब CSR जो मतलब जिनके साथ हम काम कर रहे हैं पार्टनर्स के साथ, तो वो भी जो डेटा मैनेजमेंट उनका हो जिस प्रकार से भी टेक्नोलॉजी का बेहतर टेक्नोलॉजी का यूज करके, सेम हम भी उनके साथ सीख के उन्हीं से सीख के उनको एडॉप्ट करते जाते, और उनके जो बेस्ट एक्सपीरियंस है प्रोसेस मैनेजमेंट के वो भी हम उनसे सीखते हैं। भले उनकी कॉर्पोरेट प्रोसेस होती है लेकिन वो भी हमारी एनजीओ में हम डेवलप करते, बेहतर सीखने को मिलता है। ये बात आपकी सही है।
Excellent, excellent. I think take the best of processes and systems technology from your partner.
Yeah.
And adapt it for your use. Don't use it just as it is. Okay. The next set, primary focus should be on understanding community, of course. Development programs yield outcome in longer time frame, 5 to 10 years, and different domain experts must come together. Cannot agree more. Any comments? So point number 2 is something that you have to keep stressing with your interactions with corporates. Okay. Potential of CSR in filling development gap, catalyzing development process in collaboration with government, influence development policy through bottom-up approach of development. I find this last one interesting. Basically, I think what you're trying to say is that, when you have a project or an initiative, and it goes very well or it doesn't go well, whatever it is worth documenting and sharing that learning widely so that the larger environment can benefit from it. And slowly that will start influencing policy. Sometimes we do our own little projects, we feel happy, we feel sad, we wrap it up and go home. This point is, don't just wrap it up and go home, tell others about it so that some change in the larger framework can also happen. So this is my reading from this point. Anybody has anything to add? Okay. And here's the last set of 3 points that were sent before the program. Improved understanding on linkage between business and community. CSR can add immense value, and learned result-oriented program management. Correct. I think, NGOs are moving their frameworks to be more outcome and result-oriented. And improved understanding on linkage between business and community development. I think this is very, very important and a large point being made. Anybody wants to comment on any of these? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for everybody who sent in all these before the program. I'll stop the share now, and we have about 35 minutes in which I want to okay. So what I want to do in this last half an hour is basically we've heard from both implementing partners and corporates on what they look for in proposals. I think many of us don't have a proposal format, may or may not have a proposal format which covers all the points that have been discussed yesterday and today. So what I'm going to suggest is each of you please go back to your partner from yesterday. If people haven't shared phone numbers, please do so immediately on the email. I want to go back and say that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the format they use for presentation is 8 by 8 by 8. No PowerPoint. You may be talking about a 10-year project. You may be talking about a 50 crore project. Whatever it is, you have to do it in a PPT, which is 8 by 8 by 8, which means 8 slides, 8 bullets per slide, not more than 8 bullets per slide, not more than 8 words per bullet. If you are able to, extract the spirit of what you're saying in this 8 by 8 by 8, be really understood and hold the attention of the listener. So, not now, but I want later after the course, if anybody is interested, they can send me an 8 by 8 by 8 on their proposal, and I am happy to give comments. But today what I want to show you is just what an 8 by 8 by 8 looks like. You think it is too little, but actually it's a lot. So just see this first. So effective. The first point I want to make is that even in your title slide, you can give information. So I'll just come back to you, HP. Sample of a, so I'm telling you what I'm trying to say in the slideshow. I'm giving a subtitle, an explanation. I'm saying who is presenting it and where it is being presented. So when you have so little time or luxury of words, you have to make every slide count. So even your title slide, you will try to give lot of information. And this is what 8 points into 8 words looks like. So you will see it's quite a lot of information that you can pack in. Right? There is one here which is 9 words, but that's okay. Okay. So I just wanted to demonstrate that 8 by 8 by 8 is not difficult to achieve. What I want is in the next 15 minutes, it's 12:30, your partner from yesterday. And if you had only an 8 by 8 by 8 luxury, what would be the titles of the 8 slides? I just want that banner title. Fleshing out we can do later. So when I say the first slide will cover, what will it cover? What will be the title of that slide? Is it about the organization? What is it you would like to say? Second slide, what we'll do. So we will have at the end of this thing, 16 such. So discuss it for about 15-20 minutes till 12:45 and come back to the Zoom at 12:45. You don't need to switch off just keep yourself on mute, get on the phone, talk to your partner, decide on something, and we'll see how to take it forward. Is that okay? And if there are any particular people with problems, come on to the chat. Otherwise, switch off, put yourself on mute and get on with your partners. Okay, here we are back at 12:45. I hope most people are here and have finished some amount of discussion and thinking about this issue. Is a lot of people back? Yes, many are. I have received from Mr. Narasimham on chat, but we'll come to that. Can I request Indrani? I'm just looking at people who haven't yet spoken. Indrani, if you can unmute. Is Indrani there? No. Okay, so people are showing up who may not really be there. That's also okay. Prashant? Prashant, may I ask you who was your partner and what were the 8 slide titles you came out?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Prashast and my partner was Nivita. So we couldn't speak in detail because of the time thing, but I can share the title of the slides which I had. I don't need to share the screen, right? I can just read out the title, or do you want me to share the screen?
If you have a screen and you can share it, nothing like it. Do that.
Okay. I mean, these are just titles. It says.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all we need at this stage.
It says host disabled the participant screen sharing. So I'll just read out the title. That's okay.
Okay.
Perfect. So the first was the title slide. And I mean, as you said, it can communicate much more than just being a title. So what I thought it could also communicate is why is it unique what we are doing? So, I mean, just to give you an overview, we work with mothers of children in government schools and essentially try to enable their participation in learning so that the learning increases. So, I mean, and if that part can be captured in the title slide, that is something which you could think about. The second slide would be problem statement and essentially why are government schools important and what role can mothers play. The third would be solution. How do we solve this problem? The fourth is implementation of the solution. So whatever the model is, how do you implement it? What activities you undertake? Fifth would be impact. I mean, through these activities, what is the change which we have been able to facilitate? Sixth would be how do we aim to scale this change and sustain this change? Seventh is essentially around the financials, as in what kind of financial support do we need and where exactly it will be used. And the last, I mean, would probably end it with credibility. Who are the people behind the organization? Who are the partners? Who are the advisors, board, etc. So these are the 8, I mean, broad titles which we had. I mean, very happy to have some feedback, some comments, some thoughts, criticism, whatever.
Fantastic. No, let's take all of them. I think, they're similar and we'll bunch it up and discuss it as a group. Deepak, do you want to go and mention what you did? Deepak Negi? You're on mute, please. You're on mute, Deepak.
Yeah, just a minute. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes,
ma'am. My partner was Gautam. There are two short makeup presentation, but I spoke with Pragnya. She is from corporate. I am from NGO. I am representing Rasta. So we made, we both of us made only one slide, not 8 slides. It is basically the about the skill development program, because their priority area is skill development, enhancing skills, and we also work on vocational training and skill development. So we jointly made one PPT. So I will just share what we have made. So it is the
Apparently
title.
you can't share. Yeah, just read it out. Yeah.
So the title is Rasta SEC Enterprises Joint Program on Skill. And the points we have written in this only one slide is first one is joint CSR partnership between Rasta and Sai Enterprises. Second point is program aimed towards increasing skill of migrant laborers. And the age group, the third point is age group 18 to 25 years. And since we are targeting male population of migrant laborers, so gender is male. And the fifth point is output expected to enhance masonry skills of target groups. The sixth point is outcome expected to increase their daily income. And the seventh point is through their economic development, their social and political status also gets increased. So again, the 8-point criteria, 8 by 8 by 8. So these are only 7 points which we have made. Sorry for not making all the remaining 7 slides.
No, that's okay. The last slide can be thank you. Right. Thank you, Deepak.
Thanks, Deepak.
I've noted down and we'll discuss them all.
Yeah.
Amiya, would you like to share? Amiya, can you hear me? Amiya Kumar Das?
Yes, ma'am. I have already shared the PPT. Okay. Thus, I want to share it.
No, I believe you can't share it. You just read out the titles.
Okay. The title is Value Addition in Agriculture and Allied Activities through Sustainable Solar Solutions. Okay.
Yeah. So what are the 8 points you will cover in your presentation?
Okay. Just a minute. Inception is technological intervention and training, institution building and enterprise promotion, and growth come handholding phase. These are 4 points we included in my PPT.
Okay. I think we're not quite on point, but that's okay. We'll come back to that. Arvind, would you like to share?
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you. I'm from Tata Steel Foundation, and this is my one program. It's running for last 6 years, and we need more of funding or pitching in. We have already partner called Aspire. This is an education program, and context is since we have run for 6 years, we need to expand. So keeping that view, I have put this proposal title. First slide will be organization and program goal. Second will be the strategy of the program, what we had taken. Third slide will be program major components. Fourth slide will be the current partners we have. Since I am speaking of the past 6 years, the fifth slide will be the achievements so far. Sixth slide will be a future course of action of our what will be the outcomes feature. The seventh will be the time frame, and eighth will be the budgetary part. So that is my framework. Yeah. Thank you.
Right. Great. Thank you all. It's all adding up and becoming a good whole. Mr. Lakshmi Narasimham, would you just read out your points that you had sent me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. The first slide will be objective of the project. The second will be scope and the approach. And the third will detail the solution, the approach to how will be what are the various steps, probably with timeline, and what will be the infrastructure, manpower required for addressing this. The fourth will be the budget requirements. And the fifth will be impact. What is the expected impact out of this activity? And what are the measurable data which will be collected to measure this one? And the sixth one will be the sustainability, how the project can sustain on its own after a period of time, or how long it really needs handholding. And the seventh will be the transformations which are expected both inside the organization and on the field. And eighth will be the outcome, which actually includes all the stakeholders, the long-term outcomes which are expected out of this.
Beautiful. Wonderful. Really larger points. Okay, I have time to take one more before we sum it up. Can that be you, Snigdha?
So our first slide is going to be who are we, Miracle Foundation India? What is our vision? A family for every child in a lifetime. One slide with the problem. Second slide with what does the problem do? Children deprived of parental care, colon. The fifth slide would be solution, thrive and prevention, where we also present our model and talk more because it is something which can be understood only through the picture. Seventh is the impact and the credibility, where we do want to put in people who have recognized us like Guide Star, Give India, etc., etc. And eighth, most importantly, would be how you can help.
Beautiful. I think we've got a lot of points, and you know others are also sharing. So please keep an eye on the chat box. My comment on all of this, I think we are covering. Of course, the problem has to be there, the strategy has to be there, solution has to be there, activities, impacts, financials, all of that. But I think one thing that we heard from the speakers consistently was credibility. And somehow I feel that it would be useful for all of us to put the credibility building slides up front. Not talk about the project first, but talk about who you are and why you should be, you know, trusted to take up a CSR partnership. So this would be my suggestion. You know, right at the beginning, say who you are, who the people are, what your objective is, how old you are, what you have achieved in this sector, and then you build up on a specific project. The second thing that I find a little weak is that we are nowhere portraying how well we have studied, researched, and understood the corporate partner. And therefore, how we show the overlap between what we are asking for and what are their own missions and objectives and vision. So I think that research has to come out. We are all talking about, you know, that we will portray how serious the problem is. We all know that because we are development sector professionals. We understand education or health. But we have not told them we respect you as a corporate funder enough to have done a lot of homework on you. And therefore, I am able to show how this fits into your mission, your CSR mission, or your larger mission. So these are the two overall comments. Other than that, I think we are absolutely right. Some people will go more on target group. Some people will go more, have one on output, one on outcome. Somebody may, you know, combine it. I also like the point that we should show the impact on all the stakeholders, internal, external, community, corporate, everything. Talking about scale and sustainability impacts. So, you know, these would be my two major comments that, you know, if we are forgetting whom we are addressing. We are more involved in talking about ourselves. So that is just a suggestion that I have. So before we wrap up, we have exactly about 2 minutes. If anybody would like to add anything to this, yeah, monitoring and evaluation plan is also very important. Anything that you would like to say before we close on this exercise? Because I have a follow-up homework on this. What I would suggest is each of us, when these discussions are still fresh in your mind, jot down the 8 titles of the 8 slides that you would put into any proposal. That is for yourself. And if anybody is interested in sending me a sample proposal, say by Friday, a PPT of 8 slides on this, I am happy to comment on it. I mean, I can only, as somebody who's been kicked around in the sector for several years, I might have an insight that might help. So, I think it's been a very useful day, different day from yesterday. What I am trying to do is to have you guys interact with each other. We are missing the physical workshop setting where we get as much from the resource people as from each other. We are missing the second part. That's why I've circulated the email IDs of everybody. I would urge everyone, please don't see this as an additional burden, but as something which is part of the workshop. Connect with a few people, try to have a chat with them today, if you can, about their work. I know that everybody is pressed for time, but if you can do this, it will be great. I think it will only add value to your own participation. For tomorrow, we again start at 10:30. It's going to be a very packed and very enriching day. We may go on a little more because we'll wind up after the resource persons leave. So I will beg the indulgence that we may go on till about 1:10 tomorrow. But if you have the time, I would urge each one of you to make 2 slides on your organization and CSR work. I am not guaranteeing that we'll all be able to put it up and discuss it tomorrow. We'll try to. Otherwise, we can at least circulate it to everybody. So please, before tomorrow morning, 10:30, just 2 slides. What is your organization? What is the work you do? That I think would be very useful for all of us. I'm trying to innovate ways where we can interact in a COVID situation. And this is the way we can get to know each other. So if you can do that, that will be wonderful. Share it by tomorrow morning or bring it with you tomorrow morning or have it ready. Let's see how many we can actually present and how many we will circulate. So if there are any pressing comments, happy to take them on the chat. I'll take cognizance of that. Otherwise, we can close and again at 10:20 tomorrow.